Happy Halloween from the Miscellaneous Podcast. Here are a few more stories and Dr. Lynch with more cool stuff. Just keep in mind the Dr. Lynch stuff is choppy like the other one was because it's all the same interview. We don't know what happened. We had the great levels. Everything sounded fine. But when we started editing, we noticed that everything was chopped up when he started talking about ghosts and all the paranormal stuff. So sit back, pop some popcorn, enjoy yourselves, and listen to about half an hour worth of different stories.
Yeah, now this one, I don't remember what it was, but it was down on B Street in Belleville. I don't remember the name of the place, but they were transitioning. One company was moving out, and they were clearing their shit.
And that was what scares you.
And when I got there, I go in there, and I watched the people close up and do whatever, and I go and check the doors, make sure everybody's gone, clear it out. So, I'm sitting my happy, lazy ass up watching TV. And, I don't know, I guess a couple hours later, after everybody had left, it started getting dark. I start hearing
They're here.
like somebody running up and down the steps. And I'm saying, wait a minute, I know all these people had left. So I got up, I went and looked at the steps, nothing. Okay, I'm tripping. So I go and sit back, because it was some kind of horror movie or something on TV. So, I'm thinking my mind's playing tricks on me. So, I sit down, about 20 minutes later, then it gets louder, but it's not running. It's boom, 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 hard step after hard step, like it's coming down the steps. So, all of a sudden my ass cheeks get tight in. I'm like, wait a minute. So I sit there and I turn and I look towards the steps. I don't see anything. But it stops when I look that way. Whenever I look that way, it stops.
Now,
Right.
Was it lit or was it dark? Or was it?
It was dark. After sitting there watching, and for about 5 minutes I didn't hear anything, I started to swivel again. Back around watching TV, but kind of half watching, so I'm kind of halfway watching TV out of the left eye and out of the right eye, kind of keeping my eye on the steps. And then it starts that hard again, but really fast, like they're running now. But boom, 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 boom. Dude, I got the radio, I got up, and I got my...
I want you to scream.
out in my car.
Nice.
And that's where I sat for the rest of the night.
I am the eater of worlds.
It was around Halloween time, and, high school, doing what high school kids do, we were out getting drunk in the cemetery behind the practice field at school.
There's a cemetery?
Behind the practice field, right? So we're out shooting off fireworks, of all things.
Nice.
So, we're smoking weed, we're getting drunk, and, the wind is like blowing east. We're not really paying much attention to it. And then all of a sudden, I don't know who it was, but brought everybody's attention because it was like, dude froze. And you look in his face, it was a look of terror. So we're figuring, okay, he's high, he's tripping, right? So everybody starts looking at what he's looking at. The wind is blowing east, but the cloud and smoke is floating west towards us.
Nice.
And it's getting closer and closer. Now, remember, this is the fall of the year, so it's pretty breezy. And I guess it got about 30 yards from us. And I swear, you had kids run off and leave their cars. They ran off on foot.
Wow.
And I was one of those.
It was like the movie The Fog, then, right?
Sometimes that is better.
I walk through cemeteries late at night. Doesn't bother me. From Belleville to Mascoutah, I shortcut through the cemetery.
And there's a lot of back road cemeteries that are creepy.
Look at me, Damien.
Yeah, so I'm not really a spooky person, but when you see something that can't be explained or experience something that can't be explained, it's kind of time to move.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Feeding into a ghost, does that give it power as well? Like the whole Freddy thing, as long as you believe he'll get worse.
No, not really. Feeding a ghost is becoming compliant with the ghost, and the ghost takes over your subconscious mind, and then that's how it gets more power. But it's not power; it's power over the individual who is allowing the ghost to abuse them. Psychological abuse.
Because, I mean, we grew up in Alton, and we lived off of East 11th Street, and we lived in the Topping House. And if you believe in ghosts, we had ghosts. But you just kind of, you know, you'd hear a door slam, you hear footsteps, you'll hear breathing or whatever. You just kind of move on in your life. You're like, yeah, it's a ghost, and you move on. And that doesn't feed it at all. That doesn't comply with, because you're talking about like kind of like letting them come into you and take over your body.
Right, exactly. There's this sympathetic psychological connection that you can make with the ghost, and you virtually start to channel the ghost. Mm-hmm. And you can do it subconsciously, you can do it consciously. Here's a couple of examples. One is there's a ghost in your house, and you go into meditation and you try to talk to the ghost or download the ghost. I've seen that. It always fails. Not a good scenario in the end. The other type of ghost infestation, whatever attachment, can be that you have a friend, smoker. Well, as the friend dies, then all of a sudden you start taking up smoking, and then you start doing certain characteristics that your friend had, and then that is a sign that attached. It's working through your subconscious to develop behaviors that are not normally or naturally yours.
Human beings are really kind of complex if you think about it. Even after death, they can still influence you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The human body, the human corporeal form, is a multitude of different apparatus. You have your chakra points, you have your subconscious, you have your conscious mind, you have your sleep cycles, you have your sleep, you have, REM, you have lucid dreaming, REM cycling. Every 90 minutes when you sleep, you start a whole new dream over again. We just normally remember the most dynamic dreams.
Wait, every 90 seconds you redo a dream?
No, every 90 minutes. Every 90 minutes when you dream, or when you sleep, every 90 minutes you go through a dream cycle, and it gets deeper and deeper each time. And then this is the way that the entities can try to communicate through your subconscious. I did an experiment. I was on the Art Bell show, and I said, here's a technique that everyone can use. If just before you go to bed, just say or think, is there anyone here that would like to give me a message? Dead relative or angel guide, and as you go into sleep, as you start to go into sleep, you'll hear somebody say your name, give you a message, whatever. And then it's the same process. If you wake up very slowly, come out of sleep very slowly, they can also communicate at that time as well. The subconscious, super subconscious doors are open, and then the psyche can receive data and information. And this is normally called the alpha state. Psychics, even while they're awake, go into alpha when they start to download information from. So when they, I have a friend, and she has a lazy boy, big old overstuffed lazy boy chair, and she sits down in the lazy boy and goes into what we call alpha state. What was really interesting about, she always claimed that she had a Native American shaman Indian guide, and the guide was, of course, an entity, and the guide helped her become more psychic. Well, one day she lays down on her lazy boy, and lo and behold, caught the guide on our video equipment, and it was right around her head. During her psychic trance or experience, she talked to an angel, and it was really funny. She was talking, showed up, videotaped the angels. This is the first one I ever saw. It was like Tinkerbell. It looked a lot like, if you had an out of focus photo of Tinkerbell, that's what it looked like. and it was just flying around her chair. And then she said, okay, the angel is saying to ask her a question, to ask my question. And I said, okay. So I asked my question psychically with the angel to the point to find the answer to my question. When she returned, when the session was over, right then, the angel flew right in front of the camera as if it was waving to go on, say goodbye. And then just flew through the wall and was gone. The psychic wakes up and says, I said, what did the angel look like? And she described exactly, videotaped, a hyperactive Tinkerbell. White light, just pure white light. And then I caught another angel, of course, a different type of angel in my backyard. And it came up to me. And it was the messenger angel, but since I'm not psychic, I couldn't talk to it. So it came up just to let me know that everything's okay, you know. So I videotaped that, and I put it in slow motion, analyzed it. It's amazing. It was so bright and luminescent that I thought that it was a street light. That's how bright it was. And it flew off and just flew into the reality that I understand, but it flew off and just disappeared. And then human entities show up. They're in a ball. They can be the size of a baseball, big as a basketball. One of them showed up and was flying around, and it noticed that I could see it, see me. It came close. It flew back, close, flew back, and then went on its way. I videotaped another entity 150 feet away, and it came right at me, just right at me like, hey, I'm going to dive bomb and buzz you. It came right at me, and I just kind of, stepped to the side. So I can't really talk to these things, but we can videotape them, and we can get EVPs, and we can run the scenario on why they're there. And that is the whole key. Consciousness, there's two things. Consciousness is interrelatable to our environment, to our universe. Our universe is alive and intelligent, and it's transferring data all the time. The other thing is that consciousness is energy. It's a form of energy which rivals the dimension of matter, the fourth state of matter, and that's plasma energy. So my thesis was the new field, paraplasma physics, which no one had ever heard of. And I created this field, the theory of relativity and the field of relativity. I created paraplasma physics. And then when everyone started realizing that, wait a minute, this reason or how this connects to our three-dimensional space, our reality, is because it is related to the fourth state of matter or state of energy, plasma, as plasma in our dimension. So we only see it the way that we understand it, and it looks like plasma. But it also is microwave. It falls into a form of microwave relatable events as well as plasma related events. We know that the intelligence is singular. It can be multiple levels, but it is basically singular. It's like a raindrop. It comes from the cloud, big, soft, fluffy, static electrical water, and then all of a sudden it changes frequency, becomes a sphere. It falls to the earth just like a droplet of water, and for a time, consciousness is in our and can relate to our space. So what are we missing here? We are looking at a fish in an aquarium, and we go, that's a way cool fish, but we don't even see the water because the water is transparent. So we sit back and go, looking at this exotic fish from New Zealand, and we're missing water that it's in completely. So modern science, so you have to step back, and modern science says if there's not a environment, a medium that fish can survive in, that fish cannot survive. So entities are in energies and a medium that they are stable and aware of. So the big thing is that most modern scientists have thrown out this water theory and just focused only on consciousness itself. And that's my other backup, is that consciousness requires, the level of consciousness inside the body requires the body to be made of. The other thing, it requires the body to be made of some silicon or carbon. So as we go out into space and we find Martians out there, guess what? They're going to be made of some water, and they're going to have carbon or silicon in their systems. And what do we call water in the body? We call it plasma. Plasma. So we're using the same terms, but we're using it in the science of physics to explain reaction to consciousness, a conscious reaction to our environment. So I can't see the wind, but I can sure monitor how fast it's moving. And if it gets to a certain speed, it is going to push me around. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So everyone since Thomas Edison and beyond, Westinghouse and Edison, they threw out the theory that the environment, they call it the ether at the time, the ether. Well, the ether is an old term which doesn't mean anything. But if you sit there and say there are subtle energies interwoven into our fabric of reality, then you can sit there and say consciousness, whether it's inside the body or outside the body, is in an environment that makes it stable, requires it to be stable. And therefore, it is in heaven, or the energies of heaven that are interwoven within our reality. So I say neutrinos come from our sun, and they blast out of the sun and they go directly through the earth. They just pass through the earth, and they travel almost faster than the speed of light. It took us years to find them. But when we found them, it added more to the data of high energy physics, because these neutrinos are now out there like dark matter, asteroids and meteorites that are just floating out into space until they're attracted by another form of gravity. So what we have here is an ethereal dark matter which maintains consciousness outside the body. And whether you call it the afterlife, or some people call it heaven, or whatever you want to call it, it is stable. That energy form is stable, and consciousness coexists with it. Just like the fish is in water, the fish is stable in that environment. You see what I'm saying? The environment feeds the fish survives in that environment.
Mm-hmm. All right. Quick question about orbs.
Okay.
I know you and Dave always it always comes up that he believes, he doesn't believe in all that stuff. Is it, if I'm a ghost, am I only just one orb, or could I be multiple orbs making up the one?
You're only one. Now, What can that orb do? That orb can gather free energy, electrons, in our environment. And if you have the memory, again, I'm getting back to memory. If you have the memory, that orb can collect enough energy to reconstruct itself, whatever form it was in its previous life.
And that's how an apparition can become?
That's right. That's correct. So you have something that looks human, a ghostly human. That ghostly human form is living in the memory of what it was. So if it was a woman in 1800s, it collects enough energy, probably subconsciously, and transforms that energy into its prior physical form. And that's why people still hear footsteps, they still hear voices, still see people in a distance walking around, because they've collected the energy to return to that physical. And you do it from the inside out. You don't realize it, but your subconscious mind is recording your heartbeat, your lungs, all the sounds of your body. And also the way you walk, your footsteps, And all of this is recorded in your subconscious. So if you die, you say, if you can remember your identity, I was a man, I wore blue jeans and baseball cap or whatever. And then slowly over time, that memory collects energy, and the energy responds to the memory.
Oh.
Okay.
Shadow Man. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. There you go. Why is it Shadow Man? Because it has the memory that it looks like a man or a being. And so all these things fall into a category.
But I always thought Shadow Men were like evil because they're dark. They're a solid mass of black.
No, that's just the way they're interpreted. Priests wear black clothing. Nuns wear black dresses. Black is used all the time, and then people sit back and say, "Well, they're not evil." Well, they appeared not to be evil, but then you get a man in black and a shadow man. They say, "Oh, that must be evil," and it's not. 90%. Here's a little story I'll tell you. 90% of all shadow experiences are extraterrestrial.
What?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah. Art Bell and I had a very similar experience. But if you were working on a project that borderlines extraterrestrials, Art Bell said he was working late one night. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He was doing some research on his computer, and all the lights were out in the room. Just the computer screen was on, and that's enough. The human eye can depict through the pixelation of a computer screen different wavelengths of light. And if you look around the edges when you're tired, and you can see this aura kind of emanating from your screen. Well, anyway, he looks up, and there's a shadow person standing there watching him. Then all of a sudden, the shadow person just walked toward him and then just went right out the door. I told him I think that was extraterrestrial. That was, you were just being observed, and they were projecting their consciousness in such a format that it actually reflected themselves. And that happened to me as well. There was a shadow person, and he waved to me, and then he pulls himself back into the wall and disappears. So this is a borderline of extraterrestrial monitoring. So if you come across a black project or something that they think that you may expose, reveal, I'm not really sure what their concerns are, but they get to a point where they just want to monitor your viewpoint, your mental outlook on some of this. And Art Bell has put his toes into many doors that lead toward extraterrestrial technology. And I think as he grew older, they just kept on monitoring him to see, his reaction to what if this product was extraterrestrial and not found on Earth. And then that's the entire thing right there.
Did you ever watch Dan Aykroyd's his little document? I can't say the word.
Documents. Yeah, his documentary. I saw some of his 30-minute shows and stuff like that, and I think he was just scratching the surface.
It was my brother showed it to me, and he was like sitting there smoking a cigarette, talking about his views of aliens and everything.
David Sereda. David Sereda was the producer of that, and he flew up to Canada to interview. And the light was too hot, and Aykroyd got nervous because here's the story. Have you ever heard the story about Dan Aykroyd?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Dan Aykroyd goes to sci-fi. I'll tell you this little story real quick. It's really short.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Dan Aykroyd, I don't see the time, so I'm not watching the time. So Dan Aykroyd goes to sci-fi and sells them a series. He wants to shoot it in Canada, in a studio in Canada, but with his brother's co-producer. But sci-fi says, no, you have to do it in New York. We want to keep it into American domain and copyright reasons and everything. Dan Aykroyd goes, okay, no problem. So just before he starts that show, they agree to it. They sign the contract and everything. He gets paid, and 12 episodes. And so just before they start shooting, he and his brother are celebrating. And so he goes out on his back patio. I guess they're in Canada. I hope not in New York, but in Canada. And he takes a leak. He pees off the back porch. And while he's peeing, he sees some lights that are hovering not too far away from him. And he's watching them. And he can't say that it's a aircraft of anything that he was recognized. And so he gets done peeing, and his brother steps out just to check on him. And he says, "Look at those lights over there." And his brother goes, "Yep." He goes, "I think they're watching us." And anyway, him and his brother and his wife and brother's some of his family moved down to New York, and they start to shoot the Dan Aykroyd show. I think it's called Theyre Out There. And they go through 12 or 11 is in episode 9 or in episode 10. Some guys come in and they say, "Okay, we've got some top secret stuff here, blah, 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 Men in Black." And they're from Canada. And Dan Aykroyd says, "Oh, way cool, man, way cool." So they give Dan the footage to be aired on his show. Dan sits back and says, "This is really high-end stuff. Whatever it is high-end stuff." Well, about that time, his producers, his brother and his other producers started wanting to get celebrities to talk about UFO experiences. If they've seen a UFO, so they were calling celebrities. And so Britney Spears called, and he goes, "Oh, Britney, this is great." So he goes, "I'm going to go up to the roof of the studio and I'm going to talk to Britney Spears." So he goes up to the roof, has a cigarette, and him and Britney are on the phone, and Britney is describing to him that she may have seen a UFO a couple of years ago, blah, 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 when she was on one of her concert tours. And Dan's just sitting there smoking a cigarette, and Britney rattle off experience. Dan looks down. He's on the top, he's on the roof of this 2 or 3 story building, and he looks down, and there's this Tacoma. It's either a Ford product or a Chevrolet product, but is a limousine kind of SUV kind of thing down on the street, and it was parked, and the driver gets out. Driver walks to the front of the car and looks up at him, and there is another guy rolls down the window, the passenger back seat window, or the driver's side back seat window, and he's an older gentleman. He looks up at him and he just shakes his head. And Dan Aykroyd says, "Well, this is really strange. What are they watching? Are they watching me, or is this guy from Sci-Fi and they cancel the show, or what's the deal?" Mm-hmm. So anyway, he's still talking to Britney Spears, and he turns back around. He turns around just for seconds. Of course, when you talk on the phone, time kind of flies. Looked back, the SUV was gone, driver was gone, everything was gone. There was no SUV there. Another car taking that parking spot. And he hangs up with Britney. He says not more than 12 hours later, the next day, Sci-Fi calls him and says, "You're canceled." That's it. So he always wondered in the back of his head if that guy was a Man in Black, and it was just a warning, boding or forewarning that he wasn't going to have the show. So Dan goes back to Canada and starts a vodka line under Aykroyd vodka. So I don't blame the man. It's called the Dan Aykroyd disease. When you get too close to something, they're going to either shut you down or they're going to pull you in. And in his case, they shut him down. A wild story about this is that one day, and no one's going to believe this, but I'm giving you some stories here. Jackie Gleason, who had the Jackie Gleason show, was out east. He was in New York, and he had a house just kind of south of New York. Anyway, he's sitting there having dinner, and a car pulls up into his driveway, and it's Richard M. Nixon. and no, I'm sorry. The house was in Florida. Getting this another story confused. So Richard Nixon pulls up to Jackie Gleason's driveway, tells Jackie, "I love your show. I've always thought you were the coolest guy in the world. Come with me." Okay. So we have Richard Nixon, who is the vice president of the United States under Dwight D. Eisenhower. Him and Jackie Gleason drive down to Homestead, Florida, to go to an Air Force military base down there. Nixon, because he's the vice president, they just open the doors and he just walks on in. They walk into a warehouse. Jackie Gleason says there was junk spread out all over the floor, and in the center was 3 glass tubes with liquid in them. In the center of the warehouse. In the center of the warehouse, there was 3 large glass tubes with alien bodies in them. They were in some type of liquid.
So that's where that kind of thing came from?
Oh, yeah. In Independence, in the movie Independence, yeah, that's exactly where it all came from. Yeah. So Jackie Gleason gets on his bandwagon and goes, I'm famous, I'm wealthy. I think we should open the doors to more extraterrestrial involvement, contact, whatever, because this is all probably from some of the Roswell incidents or other incidents that they got. They picked up the bodies from. And so Jackie goes on this little tirade about, we need to investigate this, we need to throw money at it, this, that, and the other. And it wasn't more than he finished his contract and never renewed. And Jackie Gleason to this day says, Richard Nixon ruined his career. So here you go. Now, I have a conundrum that there was other people that claimed that never happened. Well, Jackie Gleason's wife claims and swears on a stack of Bibles it did happen. And Jackie was adamant about releasing findings of extraterrestrials in general. And it didn't happen. It never happened until 1964, where Look magazine published a story called The Journey Interrupted, Betty and Barney Hill story, where they were actually abducted. But in the 50s, we knew in the 50s that we had extraterrestrial bodies in preserved liquid. Future study.
See, that's true, because there's 3 things that come to mind as you're telling me these stories that to me really kind of, I think it's all real. In the 50s, there was that what is it, the MoDOT, or Illinois was the IDOT, the Department of Transportation worker, and he catches those pictures from the inside of his truck. Did you ever see those?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And they're like really good.
Yeah.
And then
from a Polaroid. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the that YouTube thing of the 2 men in black walking into the hotel. Do you remember?
Correct.
You see
Correct.
that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1990s, remember they declassified all the Roswell stuff, and then they had the TV movie on it, and X-Files became really big. So, yeah.
The thing about the funny thing about the Men in Black that walked into the hotel lobby and talked to the manager of the hotel, because the guy who shot the video of the UFO over the Great Lakes was gone that day. That's really kind of funny, because what I know, they wouldn't go to his place of work. They would go to they'd find him and shake him down right there. So anyway, so these guys walk in, right? Well, I just happened to analyze that video. And guess what is going to be surprising is that those 2 men in black were wearing naval clothing, naval officer clothing.
Oh, underneath the jackets?
Underneath the jackets, the hats, the pants, and their suit jackets and ties all come from the military.
Huh.
So if you take a Navy or black, I don't know if it's Air Force, is it Air Force black or the Navy's black maybe? If you look at the
Navy, they had really
Yeah.
dark blue, and
if you take off all of the badges and ribbons and stripes, that they are straight out of military magazine issue, even down to their shoes, which were patent leather, high buffed.
so you think it's
shoes.
more like they were just regular government officials, or
No, I think they were extraterrestrial, but they are in league and working with
okay.
the U.S. military.
Yeah, because that was like almost every president who goes into office, they have this like change of aura to them after they like have the sit down. Trump, Barack, I don't really know about the Bushes, but I remember even Clinton. They had this innocent aura to them when they first become presidents, and then all of a sudden they're just kind of like they looked aged all of a sudden.
Because like I say, what they do is they say, "Mr. President, come here," and they walk into a room, and the NSA and the CIA and the FBI and the OSI and the OSS. Anyway, all of these guys are sitting down there, and they say, "Now watch the screen," and they show the Kennedy assassination, and then they go, "Any questions?" And then the president goes, "No." So you do what we say, or you die.
No!
That is the truth.
Wow.
Jesse Ventura, great guy.
yeah, his conspiracy stuff. Yeah,
he was governor, Minnesota, and the week after he was sworn in, he had a briefing. He sat it was like in a theater kind of thing, apparatus. There was a desk and a chair on the stage. He sat there, and in front of him were 40 individuals. Some of them CIA, FBI, NSA, Homeland. Homeland wasn't there yet, but there was a couple of others there, cloak and dagger, men in black. And the first question out of their mouth was, "Hi, I'm from the CIA, and how did you become governor of Minnesota on $100,000? And that was it. And then they said stuff like, "We can't believe it. We were backing the opposition, but now we're working with you." So, are elections rigged? Yeah, they probably are.
Whether you are a skeptic or a believer, we can all agree that the unknown is and always has been a fascination for all of us. And next time you walk into a dark room, think twice when you take it for granted that you're alone.
Just been informed that zombies have entered the building. They're at the door. They're coming in.
You shall feel Satan's energy as he summons the demon you requested.
Summon that demon.
It's okay if
Yea,
you don't
verily
make
I say
contact
unto ye,
the
Lord
first
Satan, come
try.
to me.
According to the
That
Joy of
too.
Satan Ministries, most people
Whoa,
have
what
to perform summoning ritual more than once for the demon to manifest. Often the demon does answer, but many are not aware. Look for positive coincidences and things out of the ordinary. Awareness is everything.